Welcome to The Explainer. You know, we're taught from a young age that failure is, well, the end. It's something to be ashamed of. But what if that's completely wrong? What if being wrong is actually one of the most powerful ways to spark creativity, to really learn, and to achieve something truly groundbreaking?
Okay, let's kick things off with this quote from Scott Adams. Now, he's not just tolerating failure, he is delighted by it. He looks at every single misstep not as a roadblock, but as a resource you can actually manage. Almost like, fertilizer for your next great idea.
So if failure can be this incredible tool, why do most of us have such a visceral, negative gut reaction to it? Why is it so incredibly hard to just raise our hand and say, you know what, I was wrong? Even just to ourselves.
To figure that out, we've got to look inside our own heads. Let's dive into the psychology behind this deep, deep fear of failing. I like to call it the failure paradox.
It turns out we have this really powerful, kind of sneaky psychological bias going on. When we succeed, we take all the credit, right? It's my skill, my hard work. But when we fail, suddenly it's about everything else. It's bad luck, the project was impossible to begin with. Our brains are basically hardwired to protect our ego by pushing failure away.
The author Catherine Schultz has a brilliant name for this: error blindness. And it's a wild concept. Think about it. In the very moment that you're making a mistake, it feels right. You can only ever recognize that you were wrong in hindsight. That's why failure always feels like it just jumps out and surprises us.
And here's where it gets really interesting. You'd think that the best way to handle a failure is to just think your way out of it, to rationalize it. But nope. A study from the University of Kansas actually found that letting yourself focus on the emotional sting of failing, actually feeling kind of bad about it, can make you perform better next time. It's like that feeling is the fuel we need to improve.
Okay, so if our brains are designed to hate being wrong, how do we fight back? Well, we can start by intentionally reframing our setbacks. We need to stop seeing them as verdicts and start seeing them as something else entirely: data.
And this is the absolute key, the big mental shift you have to make. Failure isn't some final grade on your report card. It's just data. That's it. It's raw feedback, pure information that tells you what doesn't work, which, by the way, is the most important step to figuring out what does.
This whole idea is the heart of what's called failing forward. You're not just getting over failure, you're using it. Every mistake isn't a step back. It's a necessary turn, a pivot that gives you brand new information for your next move.
All right, having a new mindset is one thing, but how do we actually put it into practice? Let's build a little toolkit, a practical guide for how you, or even your whole company, can start failing forward.
First up, you have to know what kind of failure you're looking at. Was it tactical? Your how was wrong, like a botched plan? Or was it strategic? The what was wrong. The plan itself was flawed. Or, and this is the big one, was it a failure of vision? The why. Were you chasing a goal that was never going to work in the first place? Knowing which one it is tells you what lesson you need to learn. Now, for organizations, this is huge. You have to create these controlled testing environments. Basically, safe zones where people can take smart risks and try new things without worrying they'll be punished if it doesn't work out. This creates what's called psychological safety, and that stuff is like rocket fuel for real innovation.
So here's what that actually looks like. Let's say you're rolling out a new marketing campaign. You don't just define what success looks like, more traffic or whatever. You also define what failure looks like a really high bounce rate. If you hit those failure metrics, it's not a disaster. It's just a pre-planned signal that says, okay, stop. Time to look at the data and try something else.
And for you or for your team, you can build this habit today. You could start a failure journal to see if there are patterns. Start thinking of your decisions as little experiments, not these huge final choices. And hey, if you're a leader, you have to go first. Share your own failures. Show everyone that learning is what matters, not pointing fingers.
But while embracing failure is incredibly powerful, this ability to just keep bouncing back, what we call resilience, well, it's not always so simple. It's actually more complex, and sometimes it can come with some hidden costs.
So this leads us to a really important, kind of provocative question. We're always told to be resilient, that it's this amazing positive trait. But is it always a win-win?
in every part of our lives?
So, take a look at this. It's a pretty stark example from research on kids from low-income backgrounds. The studies showed that high levels of self-control, which is a huge part of resilience, led to better grades and emotional stability. That's the win. But here's the cost, and it's startling. Those very same kids showed worse biological health, like higher stress hormones and even faster aging on a cellular level.
And there's another potential downside. Some researchers are suggesting that if you're super resilient in a really tough environment, it might actually make you less sensitive to good opportunities when they finally show up. The very armor that's protecting you might also be numbing you to the good stuff.
Okay, so keeping that bit of nuance in mind, let's wrap up by coming back to the amazing power of reframing failure. Let's look at some of the most famous innovations in the world that literally would not exist without it.
You probably have a Post-it note on your desk right now. Well, it came from a project to create a super strong glue. The result was this weak, barely sticky adhesive, a total failure for its original goal, but the perfect accident for a product that's now everywhere.
Or how about the digital camera? The inventor, Steven Sasson, was hit with every kind of failure you can imagine. Technical, communication, you name it. His own company told him again and again that no one would ever want to look at their pictures on a TV. But he just kept going.
And then, of course, there's penicillin. It was discovered because Alexander Fleming noticed that mold had contaminated one of his experiments and was killing the bacteria around it. He could have just tossed it out as a sloppy mistake, but instead, that failed experiment changed the history of medicine.
This quote from the chemist Geraldine Richmond just nails it. Failure isn't just a part of science, it's a necessary, unavoidable, and totally essential part of innovation itself.
So what all these stories show us is that real success isn't about dodging failure. It's about digging through it for clues. The question isn't if you're going to fail, it's what are you going to learn from it. So I'll leave you with this. What's one setback, one mistake you can look at today, not as a wall, but as a stepping stone?